Alright, folks, let's talk Vestiges of the Divergence, the kind of artifact evolving style weapons that are present in Explorer's Guide to Wildemount. I decided to actually split Vestiges of Divergence and Arms of the Betrayers into two separate videos because I feel like there's going to be enough content to have a both pretty lengthy video for both different sets. So if you want to see what my thoughts are and what the new Vestiges of the Divergence are that are in Explorer's Guide to Wildemount, stay tuned. So first off, let's talk about what the Vestiges are. This concept is not original to Critical Role. This has existed in Dungeons & Dragons, and I'm sure DMs have been doing it long before it ever became a quantified thing. One thing that I can point to personally from my own knowledge is a 3.5 source book, or might have been 3E, called Weapons of Legacy. And that was a book that developed the concept of a legacy weapon. Something that you get at a, not necessarily early on, but you get it at its most basic level. And as time goes on and you do great things with the weapon, it evolves and becomes more powerful. Something that I like the concept of because that lets you, like, in theory, you could have something cool when you are like a very low level character, but this grows with you. And like if you build a bond with an item or a weapon, it kind of always sucks when the DM tries to give you like something new and you're like, but I have a story and a sentimentality to this axe or this dagger. Like, just because you gave me a cool short sword that's better doesn't mean I want to get rid of it. And this kind of grows. Obviously, the Vestiges of the Divergence in Matt Mercer's storyline in the world of Exandria, they have a big impact on the world. And if you watched Critical Role Campaign 1, you would know something about some of them. I will also state that any of the ones that we saw in Campaign 1 are not covered in this book. So let's talk about what the new ones are. So he goes a little bit, it has to do with the Age of Arcanum and, you know, this whole, the lore of Critical Role is very interesting. It basically times past ancient legendary weapons. But each one is a magic item that evolves with its wielder. If not attuned to a worthy individual over a prolonged period, it will go dormant, the base state. While in this state, it grants an attuned bearer only some of its power. Over time, in response to perseverance and personal growth, it might unlock facets of its lost capabilities to enter an awakened state. Eventually, through extreme personal challenge, evolution, and achievement, they can reach the ultimate potential or the exalted state, which is the best one. It gains new features. Some may be improvements to existing features. Some may be wholly new features as time goes on. So, this section presents a number of Vestiges of Divergence that might be found anywhere in Exandria. When Vestiges of Divergence are used in a campaign, their discovery and acquisition should always be treated with a suitable amount of weight and responsibility. The point is, these are a big deal. They should be treated as such. And then he has a little blurb here box about how to advance them. So typically, the advancement echoes its wielder's journey of self-discovery, triumph or failure. However, a Vestige might evolve on its own during moments of duress or desperation for its wielder, granting additional aid in times of need. This, again, can kind of be used almost like a Deus Ex Machina to help things out, to maybe make a player or a party survive when they may have died. It's up to you. It's usually like that epic moment where, think about it just any anime, where somebody, the protagonist, is kind of beat down and almost gonna lose, and then something they've been trying to do, it doesn't even have to be an anime really, but like a technique, a move, a skill, something they've been trying to do, they finally master it and figure out how to do it, and then they can beat the bad guy. Or maybe it unlocks some super secret potential that they didn't know they had, and they use that cool ability, and that lets them overcome them. That's a way you could use a Vestige to provide a similar effect. DMs can use the following examples as guidelines for shaping the evolution of a Vestige of Divergence. A character overcomes one of their greatest fears, bravely facing an otherwise paralyzing phobia to save a fellow party member. They're beaten into an inch of their life by a long-hated foe. In the face of defeat, this is the anime thing I was just talking about, they feel a deep, dormant strength grow from within. A character loses a close ally in battle, their anguish and fury stirring the power within a Vestige of Divergence. A character discovers a facet of their destiny that guides them towards a dangerous cause. Setting aside their fears, they accept their fate and responsibility. A character successfully takes vengeance against a rival who has long tormented them. A character known for restraint gives into the immoral, violent urges that a vestige of divergence was forged to hone. A vestige typically remains dormant until its wielder is about level 9, becomes awakened between 9 and 15, and then will become exalted from 16 to 20. Ultimately, though, the progression is determined by the DM. And that's the point, right? That's how... So Weapons of Legacy, and the way I've kind of done them in my own campaign, is you usually have roughly a level-based tier. You know, I mean, Matt's ones here in the Vestiges of the Divergence only have 3 tiers, right? They have your dormant, your awakened, and your exalted state. I've done ones with 5 states or things like that. Like, you can get it and possibly have it very early on around level 1, and it has a very, very minor facet, and it grows over time. And usually the way I do that is there's a level tied to it. So it's like maybe it's 1, 5, 7, 12, 15, 18, whatever it is, right? There's different tiers, but there's also something that has to happen. Now, as you see here in this list, those were very vague advancements. So you could do something like that happens, or you could possibly have it be the weapon itself. Something specific has to, or the item rather, something specific has to happen. They need to use this sword that's an undead slaying thing to kill an undead of challenge rating 5 or below, and then it, like, if they say it was level 5 is the next advancement, they hit level 5, but they also need to kill a creature of challenge rating, an undead of challenge rating 5 or below. So even though they could be level 7, if they don't come across an undead that they can slay with the weapon, it doesn't unlock it. So that's, again, just concepts of how that works. So that's enough about, talking about them in general. Let's take a look at the items themselves. So first we have Danoth's Visor, legendary attunement. They're pretty much all going to be legendary items that require attunement. Mithril Frame Goggles. They were used by the evoker Danoth Oro to spot invisible enemies. So in Dormant stage, the base stage, you can see in darkness, both magical and non-magical, to 60 feet, and you have advantage on investigation and perception checks that rely on sight. When you awaken it, you can now see invisible creatures and objects within 60 feet as if they were visible, and you can see into the ethereal plane. As a bonus action, you can speak a command word and use the goggles to see through solid matter, so they get the X-ray kind of effect here. Vision is 60-foot radius and lasts for a minute. To use solid objects within the radius appear transparent. Vision can penetrate 1 foot of stone, 1 inch of common metal, or up to 3 feet of wood or dirt. Thicker substances block the vision, as does a thin sheet of lead, similar to a X-ray things in real life. And as a bonus action, you can speak a command word to switch the goggles into spyglass mode. Well, in this mode, creatures and objects viewed through the goggles are magnified to twice their size, so that basically makes them binoculars. A reminder that these are progressive, so whatever you had, you're getting the new stuff on top of what you already had. And if you manage to exalt it, you automatically detect illusions you can see and automatically succeed on saving throws against them. In addition, you see a bright aura around any creature that isn't in its true form. So this is essentially they're like true sight goggles, basically. And as an action, you can cast the anti-magic field spell from the visor. The property can't be used again until the next dawn. So it just gives you a nice 8th level spell ability. Then we have the Grimoire Infinitus. I really like this one a lot. It's just basically a badass spellbook. Legendary, requires attunement by a wizard. So what does it get? In dormant form, it has spells in it. The first pages has Alarm, Anti-Magic Field, Bigby's Hand, Blight, Charm Person, Confusion, Control Weather, Create Undead, Detect Thoughts, Enlarge Reduce, Fear, Foresight, Gaseous Form, Glyph of Warding, Legend Lore, Leoman's Tiny Hut, Mass Suggestion, Mislead, Misty Step, Mordenkainen's Faithful Hound, Prismatic Spray, Ray of Enfeeblement, Silent Image, Teleport, and Thunderwave. I also feel like there's a huge disparity between some of these items. Like, the last one was really cool and gives you, like, True Sight and that kind of a thing. But this is a spell book for a wizard that's giving you all those spells on the base level. Like, that's pretty sweet. When you can use the Grimoire as your spellbook, and you can scribe new spells into it. When you prepare wizard spells using the Grimoire, the number of wizard spells you can prepare increases by 1. That's really useful because we don't typically have that. Items that do things like that. So the only way you, for a wizard, it's you prepare your wizard level plus your intelligence modifier in spells per day. This is increasing that by 1. And as a spellbook, you are getting, at the base level, all of those spells in your spell book. So that means they're in there. You can cast them if you have the slots to do so, and then also increasing the number you can prepare once per day. Reminder that unless they are a ritual spell, you have to choose to prepare them that day to be able to cast them, even if you have them in your spellbook. At the Awakened state, while you carry the spellbook, you have advantage on saving throws against spells and magical effects. That's awesome. That's like a 14th level ability for Abjuration Wizard, or the effect of a Mantle of Spell Resistance, or at least half of it anyway. And when you prepare wizard spells using the Grimoire, the number increases by 1 again. So now we can prepare 2 more wizard spells than we normally could. And lastly, if you get it to the Exalted state, you can now use your Arcane Recovery feature twice between long rests rather than once. This is the ability for a wizard to take a short rest and recover half of their level rounded up in spell slots. That's really big. And then once again, another wizard spell. So 3 access to all of these spells, 3 more spells prepared per day than normal, and Arcane Recovery twice per long rest rather than once, and then advantage on saving throws against spells. Next up, unfortunately, too, I thought it was a little kind of a bummer. We don't have art for every single one of the items, which is kind of a bummer. For example, the Hide of the Feral Guardian, we don't have art for. It is studded leather armor, used by a gift from Melora, right? So we know about Melora if you've been watching either one of the campaigns. Dormant, it is a +1 studded leather armor, which is nice, even just by itself. And then while you're, while you are transformed by an effect that replaces any of your game statistics with those of another creature, you have a +1 bonus to melee attack and damage rolls, and you retain the benefits of this armor. So what that means is if you have something like a polymorph spell cast on you, or you are a druid, for example, or someone who can transform into another creature, it's going to still retain the +1 bonus to AC in your new form, and you're going to get a +1 bonus to attack and damage rolls, therefore making them magic. And it also gives you, as an action, you can use the armor to cast Polymorph on yourself, transforming into a giant owl while retaining your intelligence, wisdom, and charisma scores. Can't be used until the next dawn. So this basically makes, rather than a polymorph spell, even though it is, and you do still have to concentrate on it, it gives you sort of the benefits that a druid has of wild shape, where they retain their mental stats, but take on the physical stats of the creature. In the Awakened state, it now becomes +2 studded leather armor. While you are transformed, the attack and damage roll increase you got increases by +2. And you can now polymorph yourself. When you cast polymorph spell using this armor, you can transform into a cave bear. Reminder that you get it once until the next dawn, and you now have 2 options. You can either be the giant owl, retaining the stats, or be a cave bear, which is basically a polar bear with dark vision, instead. And then lastly, there's the Exalted state, increases your armor class to a +3. So now it is +3 armor, providing you a +3 bonus total to attack and damage rolls in a transformed state. When you cast this spell using Polymorph, you can now choose either Giant Owl, Polar Bear, or Guardian Wolf, a new creature, which we have listed right here. It is a huge monstrosity, it's a challenge rating 4, 14 AC, but reminder, you're going to have the +3 from the armor, so a 17 AC. 66 hit points, you got a 60-foot movement speed, stealth and perception check proficiency. You can actually speak Common and Elven. You have pack tactics and keen senses for hearing and smell. You make 1 bite and 1 claw attack. Your bite attack, +8 to hit, a d10 +6 piercing damage, and they need to make a DC 16 strength save or be knocked prone. And your claw attack does 2d8 +6 piercing. Another thing to consider, even if you're not going to use this item in your game, is to have the stat block for Guardian Wolf as a stat or a creature that exists in your world. Again, we don't have, if we click on this, it's just going to give us the stat block. We don't have any lore for Guardian Wolves, and I would have liked that myself. Just a little nitpick. Then we have the Infiltrators key. So this is a Mithril Skeleton key for stealing magic items. So what do we get from the base level? It can be used as thieves' tools for the purposes of opening locks. When using the key, you are considered proficient in thieves' tools, and you have advantage on ability checks made to open them. So even if you have the key and you're not a rogue, it gives you thieves' tool proficiency, and you can use it, and you have advantage on the ability to open locks. When holding the key, your steps are muffled, giving you advantage on dexterity stealth checks made to move silently. So again, doesn't have to be used by a rogue, but it seems like it might provide significant benefits if a rogue were to use it. Then if you awaken it, when holding the key, you can use a bonus action to transform the key into a magic dagger or back into a key. We see a lot of transforming items in these books here. While in the form of a dagger, it has a +1 to attack and damage rolls, and it returns to your hand immediately after it is used to make a ranged attack. Very cool. And while holding, you can use an action to cast the following spells, one of the following spells from it: Alter Self, Invisibility, Knock, or Pass Without Trace. All very good spells for a rogue to have. Once a spell has been cast from the key, it can't be used to cast that spell again until the next dawn. So it does let you cast, sounds like it lets you cast each one of those spells once. And then we have Exalted Infiltrator Key. As a bonus action, you touch the key to a wall, floor, ceiling. There's no more than 5 foot thick, and it causes a magical door or opening to appear in the surface. When you create the opening, you choose its length and width up to 10 feet for each dimension. Basically a pass wall spell. The opening lasts until the key passes through to the other side, at which point it disappears. If the creature is in the opening, it's shunted to the nearest unoccupied space. This can't be used until the next dawn. And then we have, while holding the key, you can now also cast the additional following spells from it: Dimension Door, Gaseous Form, or Mislead. Again, very good roguish thief-style spells. Once a spell has been cast using the key, it can't be used to cast that spell again until the next dawn. Then we have the Stormgirdle. This is a girdle, essentially, with the symbol of cord. It is legendary, again, requires attunement. While wearing the Stormgirdle in its dormant state, you are resistant to lightning and thunder damage, and your strength score becomes 21 if it isn't already 21 or higher. In addition, you can use an action to become a Storm Avatar for 1 minute, getting the following benefits for the duration. You have immunity to lightning and thunder damage. When you hit with a weapon attack that normally deals bludgeoning damage, it deals thunder damage instead. When you hit with an attack that normally deals piercing or slashing damage, it deals lightning damage instead. And as a bonus action, you can choose one creature you can see within 30 feet of you to be struck by lightning. The target makes make a DC 15 dex save, or take 3d6 lightning damage on a failed save, or half on a success. Once you use that property, you can't use it again until the next dawn. Yeah, that's the Storm Avatar property, which is where? Wait a minute. Oh, okay, I understand. All of those benefits, immunity to the damage, the extra switching the damage type, and the call by lightning, that is the Storm Avatar ability. That whole piece, which lasts for a minute, can't be used until the next dawn. Then, at Awakened state, your strength score becomes 23, if it's not already higher. Your Storm Avatar's lightning damage increases to 4d6 from 3d6, and while transformed in Storm Avatar form, you gain a flying speed of 30 feet, and you can hover. And then lastly, at Exalted state, it becomes strength becomes a 25, if not higher, and your Storm Avatar Lightning Strike deals 5d6 lightning damage instead of 3d6 or 4d6 like it was before. And you can cast Control Weather from the girdle once. Can't be used until the next dawn. Then we have Verminshroud. This is a cloak, patchy cloak, requires attunement. Obviously legendary. While wearing it in its dormant state, you get the following benefits. You have advantage on perception checks that rely on smell. You are immune to disease. You have dark vision out to 60 feet. If you already have dark vision, it extends it another 60 feet. And as an action, you can use the Verminshroud to cast Polymorph on yourself, turning into a giant rat or a regular rat, and you still get to retain your intelligence, wisdom, or charisma scores, as well as the properties of the cloak itself, meaning the dark vision and advantage on perception checks. That can't be used again until the next dawn. At Awakened state, you have resistance to poison damage. You can use an action to cast the Insect Plague spell, which is a 5th level spell, I think, with a save DC of 15 from it, requiring no material components once per next dawn. And when you use Polymorph via Verminshroud, you can now turn it into a giant wasp. I like it because the vermin, it's seemingly using vermin like it was back in older editions where that covered like rats and things, but also like insects. And then at its Exalted state, you gain a climbing speed equal to your walking speed. Your teeth become razor-sharp natural weapons, which you can use to make unarmed attacks. If you hit with them, you deal piercing damage equal to 1d6 plus your strength mod instead of bludgeoning for a normal unarmed strike. You can make this attack as a bonus action. When you bite a creature and deal damage to it, they must succeed on a DC 17 Constitution saving throw or be poisoned for 1 minute. They can repeat the save at the end of their turns, ending the condition on the success. And when you cast Polymorph with the Verminshroud, you can now take the form of a giant scorpion. And lastly, we have Wreath of the Prism. So this is a loop of thorns, golden thorns with gems inside it, 5 different colors of Tiamat. It could be used, it looks like it's a necklace as opposed to like a crown, but while wearing this wreath in its dormant state, you get dark vision out to 60 feet. If you already have it, it extends it another 60 feet. When you hit a beast, dragon, or monstrosity of challenge rating 5 or lower with an attack, or when you grapple it, you can use the wreath to cast Dominate Monster on the creature. On a success, the target is immune to this power of the wreath for 24 hours. On a failure, a shimmering gold image of the wreath appears as a collar around the target's neck or as a crown on its head, your choice, until it is no longer charmed by the spell. If you use the wreath to charm a second creature, the first spell ends immediately. When the spell ends, the target knows it was charmed by you. I think this is what Joe Manganiello has that he used to get Chongo his Manticore mount for his character Archon. I think that's what this is. Once the Wreath of the Prism reaches Awakened state, it can now affect creatures of challenge rating 10 or lower, which is bananas. And the save DC of the Wreath is 15. So I guess it's not too crazy. It's not bananas. Ignore that comment. Its challenge rating are 10, but it's only a DC 15 wisdom save for Dominate Monster. But they basically fall completely under your control, and they are under it for, it looks like, well, this Dominate Monster is 1 hour. But let's see, on a failure, it appears as a collar around their neck. Oh, and it is no longer on your head or your choice until it is no longer charmed by the spell. If you use the wreath on a second creature, when the spell ends, the target knows. Okay, so it sounds like this only works for an hour. This isn't a permanent effect. I thought it was a permanent effect, but maybe I'm wrong. And then lastly, at its exalted state, it can affect challenge rating creatures of challenge rating 15 or below, and the save DC is 17. Because the way I thought I remember hearing it about with Archon and Joe Manganiello's character was when you used this, it was a permanent effect. But this is just cast the Dominate Monster spell on them. And then, yeah, they're immune for 24 hours, but I think that's part of the Dominate Monster spell. On a failure, the wreath appears as a collar around their neck or a crown on their head until it is no longer charmed by the spell. Yeah, so it is still the spell as it is, which is a concentration spell for an hour. I'm assuming because the item's doing it, it's not casting the concentration. But yeah, I don't know. It would be really cool. I think for this being a vestige of the Divergence, I think it would make more sense in my mind the dark vision is nice, sure. In my mind, I think it would be nice if this was a permanent effect, because that's seemingly the whole thing this thing does. All it does is let you dominate. You get dark vision for free, and then when you hit a creature, a beast, dragon, or monstrosity of challenge rating 5 or lower, or when you grapple it, you can use the wreath to cast it. But it's not a guarantee when you put it on them. It's not a guarantee that they're going to fall for it. They can still break out of it, and the save starts at 13, so they could break out of it. They're immune for 24 hours if they fail, and if you succeed, then they're charmed by it, but they're only charmed, as I'm reading it, and correct me if I'm wrong, I'm sure you guys will, as I'm reading it, only lasts as though the spell, which is an hour, seems, in my mind, kind of weak for it being a vestige. The fact that you can use it to affect higher level creatures here, like a challenge rating 15 creature at the end, is crazy, because turning a challenge rating 15 creature to your side, even for an hour, could drastically alter the course of combat. By all means, we know that. But granted, you're going to be probably in the high teens to be using this item. You're going to be level 16-ish anyway, so that's something to consider. But when it ends, they know they were charmed by you, so it's not like it's a secret thing and it goes away. So I don't know. I'm curious. That's really, in my mind, that was the weakest. That and the Visor seemed to be the weakest ones in my mind. But I really like the book. The spell book, I think, is probably the spell book, and I think the Hide of the Feral Guardian. Those two that kind of gives you wild shape with cool options, and then the spell book for the wizards. Those are probably my two favorite out of all of the ones that we had. But I'm curious, which one's your favorite? Do you think I'm misinterpreting the Wreath of the Prism? Or do you think it should be a permanent effect? Because in my mind, that's how it should work, but that may be just tainted by what I assumed is how it worked on Archon, Joe Manganiello's character. But I don't know. Let me know what you guys think. So once again, I do appreciate everybody coming out and checking out all the new content that I've been putting out. There is still more Critical Role Wildemount content coming. Next video is going to be a video on the Arms of the Betrayer. Then we're going to talk about all the new monsters in the kind of bestiary section. Then I want to go back and do the historical chronicle background building piece. And enough of you have asked, you want me to cover, even if it's just high level, the deities and the gods and things of Wildemount. So I will do that. And yes, I do plan on trying to take some time to read through the adventures to talk about those as well, because I think that would be interesting. Again, I'll probably go high level on the adventures. I don't think I'm going to read through everything because that'll take forever. But just hit the highlights and what I like and don't like about the different adventures in the book. So anyway, I do have a giveaway too, I guess I should say, of Wildemount going on right now. There's actually 2 giveaways going on simultaneously here on Nerd Immersion for a bunch of cool books from Jetpack 7, as well as Wildemount and some dice and things. There'll be links in the description to both of those. And I guess lastly, before I close this out, I do have a Discord. There's links in the description for my Discord server. Apparently, a lot of people didn't know I had one, and a lot of people have found it recently, which is great because we do. I'm pretty active in there, as are a lot of members in the Nerd Immersion community, talking about D&D. People are setting up a lot of new games and things, looking for group systems that we have set up in there because of the scenario we're in the world. But talking homebrew, designing monsters, combat, character building, it's a cool space, and maybe you'll enjoy it if you come check it out. So if you haven't subscribed, well, this is my standard YouTuber thing telling you, please subscribe to the channel and ring the notification bell if you haven't already. Thank you all so much for watching. I'll see you next time.